G'day mates, it's B-Buster here, and I would like to give Best Fiends a big shout out for sponsoring this episode. So, have you ever just disappeared without a trace and your family has begun wondering where you are? Well, I did that the other day after I ate dinner to score a little extra time with Best Fiends. Others may wonder where you got off to, but if you're having as much fun with Best Fiends as I am, then it's no secret why you're sneaking off to play. With Best Fiends, you play through an actual storyline, which helps with that satisfying feeling of progression. It's also an awesome brain-boosting puzzle game that is great for downtime. I really like playing it when I'm on a long trip somewhere, like stuck on a train or in a car or something. There are tons of unique fiends to collect, and with offline play, even when you're stranded, you have something to keep you entertained. Best Fiends is now my go-to game at night too, when I'm just chilling in bed and I can't sleep, like normal. And not to brag, but I'm over 1,000 levels in now and I still can't put the game down. In fact, 30 minutes can feel a lot like 30 seconds with how much fun I'm having. There are tons of levels with new challenges coming online all year round, and with thousands of levels to chew through, there is always something new to do. It's free to download and is endless amounts of fun. So, download your new favorite getaway, Best Fiends, for free today on the App Store or Google Play. You'll even get $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends. So I was telling this story to a school friend today, and he said that maybe I should share it here and ask if anyone knows of an explanation. Here's some background info. So, I, a 16-year-old male, and my father were hog hunting in southern Tennessee. We've taken trips to hunt for various game every year just after. This year, though, we had a good season for deer and didn't want to let the hunting be over, so we decided to hunt hogs. If you didn't know, hogs are an absolute nuisance of a species, meaning that they can be hunted any time of the year. He had come with me to my stand and gave me general directions to his if I needed needing them or whatever. I didn't see anything all afternoon, to be honest, and as soon as the sun began to set, I heard what then sounded like gunshots, and then squealing from the direction that I understood was my dad's stand. I sat for a moment and decided that I'd go and take a look and see if he had gotten anything. Seeing as the sun was already setting, I figured that it'd be better to help with what little light we had. After about 3 minutes of walking, I came upon what I thought was his stand, though it was more like a shack, I guess. It looked very unkempt and rickety. In any case, I approached it and saw my dad through a gap in one of the walls that I assumed was a shooting window. I whispered, asking him if he'd gotten anything. He very slowly turned to look at me. If you hunt, then you know that your head movements must be slow as not to alert any game. But this wasn't that. It was more of a foreign movement. One resembling that of a serial killer almost in some dumb horror movie or something. He looked at me with a blank expression for a minute. Well, not completely blank, but it had a slight hint of anger, but I quickly chalked it up to my dad wondering why I'd leave my stand before he called. Seeing that I decided that he was not ready to leave, I made my way back to my stand without questioning him any further. Sure enough, my dad called my phone a few minutes after I got back to my stand, saying that he was coming to get me and that we'd leave. On the way home, I asked him why he didn't say anything when I came by, and he sort of looked at me confused and said something along the lines of, "You never came to me." I laughed briefly and asked, "No, seriously." My dad is a jokester, but not a prankster or someone who likes scaring people, but he was dead serious. He genuinely stated that I never came to see him at all. The next day, after trying for a while to brush it off, I asked him to show me his stand. And it was not the one that I had went to. And when I went to find where I'd went, there was nothing but a field. No stand at all. Now, I've tried to rationalize it time and time again, but I still have no idea what really happened. At this point, I want to believe my dad is steadfast in his attempt to spook me, Or that I imagined it somehow, but I know what happened, and to be honest, I believe my dad. Does anyone have a more accurate idea of what it was? I've always jokingly said that it was a skinwalker, but to be honest, I kind of wonder what it really was now. So please, if you have any thoughts, then do share them. So, this was 3 years ago, right before the pandemic hit, and it's now one of my favorite stories to tell, now that I'm no longer scared, and I've moved like 1,000 miles away, and a few years' time has passed too. So my husband, he was in the military during this time, and I was a housewife due to work being hard for me to get in my area. I can't drive, and I lived off base. Well, any military person knows, military schedule is pretty darn predictable, and much of our lives ran on easy-to-memorize schedules, and to make matters worse, my husband was often gone for long hours at a time. For about 2-ish to 3-ish months, I'd say, I'd been seeing this guy wandering around my home, peeking in windows. Honestly, I didn't originally think much of it, beyond being weirded out, obviously. We didn't have anything that would interest a robber. No TV, a single 7-year-old computer, a broken couch and table, a mattress on the floor. Literally nothing expensive in our home beyond a gun that was locked up in a safe that may have looked like it had stuff, I guess, but that's a lot of work for what looks like the home of people living in poverty, right? So, I don't really think anything of it. Yet, he kept coming back when my husband was gone. I'd see him every few days, or hear him due to my normally super sweet cat at the time hating him and hissing and yowling when he saw him, so I'd know that he was there when I hear my cat making an angry fuss. Well, one day, I went out with my husband, and I guess I didn't lock the door or something properly, as our lock could be a bit funny and I was running late. According to our normal schedule, I would have gone off base with my husband for family mandatory fun, and I would have come back home alone in an Uber while my husband stayed on the base to work or hang with friends and whatnot. But what ended up happening was I fell sick with a migraine, and his sergeant told him to take me home and take care of me when he saw me. Now, before I go on, I should probably describe my old home. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment complex in the mountains. It was a massive complex. My home layout was this. My front door led to my kitchen and dining area. My kitchen and dining area wall next to my door was another glass door. Think a sort of patio door, I guess. Across from my kitchen was my room. Then you go down the hall and hit the living room that has another glass door wall next to the fireplace. And finally, after that, you go across the living room at the end of the hall and you hit our guest room, or my plant room, cat's playroom, guest room sort of thing, with yet another glass door wall. I was literally surrounded by giant glass doors, is what I'm getting at. Then outside we had a porch, and on the porch was a storage closet where I usually kept my bike, as I couldn't drive due to my migraines and seizures and whatnot. So, when my husband brought me home again, not per our normal schedule, we came home to find our door slightly ajar. We gave each other a look and went inside anyways, with me mumbling about how I must have not locked properly due to us being in a rush that morning. We walked into the kitchen when my husband immediately went to the fridge and started looking around for water for himself and me. He then spoke for the first time while in the fridge. Honestly, I don't really remember what he even said. But then we heard something, maybe a few seconds after he spoke. Our porch glass door in the back of our home moved. We both knew the sound really well too, as I like to sit on the porch reading for hours, so I was always coming in and out. He then grabbed my shoulder and whispered to grab his gun from our room, and he then grabbed a butcher's knife and went towards the living room. I went and grabbed the gun, noticing on my way into our room that down the hall, that our living room glass porch door was, it was wide open. Upon giving my husband the gun, and following behind him as I dialed 911 in my panic, saying that I had an active break-in while my husband did a sweep of our home. While I was on the phone, upon coming back down the hall towards the kitchen, to see if he went around back to get up to the front. It was the only way out of the area that he went, as we lived on a literal mountainside and one side was blocked off out back. We heard our storage door out back that we forgot to shut slam open. Me and my husband ran out back where we found our storage door swinging open and just barely saw the same guy who'd been spying on me and our home. Obviously, he didn't end up coming back that day. I also later found that the only things missing were some of my clothes, lingerie, and bathroom care products. The police, they showed up 4 hours later and took a statement from me and my husband. Eventually, my husband had to return to his normal schedule. I was terrified, and he didn't like it, but he also had no choice until we could find a new place in 3 months when our contract ended. And to be honest, the first few weeks were pretty much fine. He didn't come back. My cat didn't yowl or throw any fits, so he didn't see him either. Things were fine that week. Then another week went by, and I started to think maybe the gun that we brought out scared him or something. The third week, though, he ended up coming back while my husband was at work in the morning. He first tried the door and was trying to force it open, and then started banging on the glass next to the door. I put 911 on speaker and texted my husband while I panicked and cried. While I was on the 911 call, he ended up leaving the front door, giving up, I guess, and when I voiced that he walked away from the door to the 911 dispatcher, the lady who was speaking to me thought that I was being ridiculous, freaking out this badly over someone trying to get into my locked door. I hung up and finally called my husband while I had a full-on panic attack, and it turns out that he was already coming home with a car full of his and my friends also in the army, and who work with him, as they turned around towards me as soon as I texted what was going on. And this guy, he ended up going to the back door and trying both glass doors there as well before finally giving up. About 4 minutes later, my husband and his friends arrived and found me clutching my cat and crying. They ended up scanning the area and still didn't find him. The cops, they showed up 7 hours later, and I, very angry this time, gave another report. I ended up with 3 of the guys sleeping over in the spare room that night, and my husband and me, we slept in our now locked and bolted bedroom. I got a lock installed on the bedroom door after the first time. Then, the next day, my and my husband's friends went out and got and installed cameras in all of our doors and window areas. After this last time, beyond him going back to looking in our windows 3 more times, thankfully I never had another issue. I moved out shortly thereafter this too, and since then, I never saw him again. The other day, I was grocery shopping at my local Walmart with my 4-month-old. While I was loading up my vehicle, I heard an "excuse me" from behind me. My cart was very full to the point of, well, almost overflowing with larger items like toilet paper, diapers, etc. So I thought maybe something fell out of my cart at first, or that I left something behind in the store. As I turned around, there was a woman about 2 feet away from me, which in itself startled me. She was holding a bouquet of wilted flowers and was handing me a rose saying Happy Mother's Day. Out of instinct, I reached out and took the rose from her. I immediately became hyper-aware of my surroundings, though, and instinctively grabbed onto the cart, which had my son in his car seat still in it. But the conversation then went as follows. She said, "Happy Mother's Day." It was very monotone, no smile, nothing. I said, "Thank you." "Oh, I need donations. My child is very, very sick." Tries to show me a laminated but old-looking piece of paper, but it was under her arm holding it. "Oh, no, I'm really sorry to hear that. I don't have any cash on me to give you, sorry." Stares at me for a few seconds. "But my child, I need donations." I was starting to get nervous. I'm really sorry. I wish I could help, but I can't." I handed the rose back to her. "You don't want it? My child is really sick. You can keep the flower for yourself, and I do hope your child gets better. Sorry." She grabs the flower from me and starts running to other people in the parking lot. I was really scared at this point, and I started to almost panic, so I put my son into my vehicle, trying not to touch him with the hand that was holding the flower because of the stories that I've been told. I then got into my vehicle and locked the doors and started washing my hands with sanitizer that I keep in the vehicle. I sat there for a few minutes making sure nobody was around me, and nothing was happening to me, obviously, and then I filed a police report for suspicious behavior. Maybe I overreacted, I know, and this woman really was looking for help for her child, but the whole situation just seemed fishy to me, especially after she left me. She went over to other people and was even banging on their car windows at one point. While I was filing the police report as well, I watched a man driving around the same area of the parking lot, taking pictures of the same vehicle and parking in multiple different spots, then moving and taking more pictures, and so on and so forth. Needless to say, I got the heck out of there, and I didn't go back for quite some time. About 7 years ago, before I met my now husband, I joined a few dating apps. A few of my friends had wonderful experiences and even met their now spouses on there, so I figured that I'd give it a try. I was 21 at the time and had also recently lost quite a bit of weight and was tiny for the first time in my life, so I was ready to put myself out there. I didn't take it too seriously, let the men come to me sort of thing, and eventually there was a guy who caught my eye. His name was Watson. He was 23 and very handsome in my opinion. We matched on Bumble and kept talking for quite a while. It turned into texting, then phone calls, and then him asking to meet up. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think that I have any superpowers or can tell the future, but when he asked to start seeing each other in person, I just had an off feeling in my gut. I thought maybe it was just anxiety, but later I found out that somehow I just knew. After blowing off plans and saying that I was busy multiple times, he got mad and blocked me on everything. That was fine. I felt a bit bad, to be honest, but I was also 21 and he gave me the creeps, so good riddance, really. Fast forward 6 months later, and I had met and started dating my now husband. It was around this time that I got a message from Watson on Facebook and let him know that I had met someone new and I wished him well. But he got really angry, oddly too, for someone that I had never met in person. He started calling me names, swearing a ton, so I blocked him. This was the last place that I hadn't blocked him on. Then came the spam accounts, the new Instagram handles, more name calling, which eventually actually became threats. Thankfully, he did back off and stop eventually. I was really relieved too, because I hadn't dealt with someone like this before or even after, so I was genuinely scared. But a year later, I was at Target shopping for some new shoes and makeup. I checked out, headed to my car, keys in hand. I had just opened my door after loading my trunk when I swear that I heard someone yelling my name. So I turned around thinking that it was a friend or a coworker, but no, it was Watson. I got into my car without a word. I definitely went into fight or flight mode and I was ready to fly. The last thing that I saw of him, though, was him standing in the middle of the Target parking lot after chasing my car. It's been years and I haven't heard or seen him again, and I hope to never have any other creepy encounters like that. But a point of advice for any of you guys out there looking for a girl on a dating app? Trust me, don't chase girls. We hate that. So 3 days ago, my old man went out of town. The first night, I heard what I assumed was a large critter. This is a long story, but recent. I want to say that I'm glad that they left or knew that I was armed, or not worth dying or killing. Whatever the reason, I'm just glad that they left. So 2 nights ago, I was awoken by my dog between 11 and 3 a.m. at most. He kept near me when I got up and made a low, aggressive sort of growl face out of my room, but kept close to me. He's never really done this before, mind you. I've worked with canines for years, and this just gave me a gut feeling, and that was when I heard it. Someone talking. In my yard, like no more than 20 feet by the sound. Low, mumbling, sort of bad whispering. I was blaring Return of the King, yes, the extended version. And I need to add that I have really good hearing at my age. If you can speak in like a floor home with 2 doors closed at like a whisper, I can usually still make out the words. Anyway, he went quiet when I opened a drawer too loud to grab my hidden 380. I chambered around and I noticed a shadow passing by the light outside the blurred window, blackout curtains. The home was clear, all the doors were locked, nothing odd, so my dog peeled out. I held my flashlight in one hand, went his way and called him to the other side. And he was gone. I guess they knew that I was home and ran on foot or something. I went around, but thought, okay, I'm good. Well, Florida continues to be Florida, I guess. Night 3, my dog does this again in the same frame, waking me up. At this rate, I just got the 12 gauge. My dog was acting far more protective and gave me the dog body language for major threat, need the pack, can't handle alone sort of thing. I froze for a moment. There were 2 people now. This is not good. They must intend to violently take whatever they want. It was one new guy, and definitely the other guy that I saw the other night. I can't really risk getting a look or anything. At this rate, they definitely mean business, and had to be armed to scope out a place with a ring of like 60 pounds of muscle of dog, and me with a lifetime of handling guns. And I mean, they were in the yard at around 2:30 in the morning for a second night. They knew that I and my dog were home, but clearly they had a goal. This time, the voices were behind the home, though. My dog then pulled a Leroy Jenkins on me. He gave off the most aggressive loud bark that I've ever seen any dog do, and ran to the wall. I ran to his side and yelled, "They're dead men." It was at this point that things were clicking for me too. This was planned and professional. I checked every inch of the property with the shotgun. My dog was worked up and spooked, but definitely calming. But in the end, we couldn't find anything. I'll definitely be buying a mistake for this one, though, and a good one, too. I went inside. I literally kept the gun on me, chambered, and on reach of my bed, too, and I barely slept. Day 4, I did a bit of looking around for like misplaced or slightly moved objects or scratches or anything like that. And yeah, one trash can by the gate was rotated 180 degrees. It had the handle facing me, not the wall as it's always been placed. There were also a few crushed twigs as I went back there. The head chair was turned and moved to the right. A clearly odd thing too is that table set is symmetrical, so it's glaringly obvious out of place if you lived here. I did the ring, and my neighbors so far have shown nothing, but I knew these guys had to have known that he left. I knew that his son lived there too. The dog would eat them. It's huge. I had a gun, and I even announced that I was armed. Yet, whoever this person was came back with backup too. Also, he definitely moved stuff that I didn't know until my Marine buddy told me to check to see if there was any rocks out of place or anything like that. It's a way to apparently gauge the person's awareness and presence, I guess, but whatever their goal was, I'm pretty confident that it was not good. When I was a child, I was extremely afraid of the dark. I would go sleep on the floor of my parents' room, or sometimes my sister's, when the fear became too much for me. I think most kids are afraid of the dark to some extent, right? But I had experiences that caused the fear, you see. And I would like to share one of the strangest experiences that I ever had. So my parents were divorced. I only saw my dad like every other weekend. My sister and I usually go to his house together, and when I'd get scared, I would go sleep on her floor. One particular weekend, I went by myself, and there was something about that house that just really creeped me out, especially at night. It was bedtime, and I was laying in my bed trying to ignore all of the little creaks and the noises of an old house, and what sounded like footsteps, when the fear just finally got too much to me. I had to go and sleep on my dad's floor, and I went to his bedroom door, only to discover that it was locked. I was so scared that I had to get in there no matter what, though. He had a door that could be unlocked with a penny, so I went back to my room to retrieve a coin so I could break in and sleep safely on his floor. I went across the hall to his door and went to unlock it, when the handle started to turn slowly to the right and then to the left. I checked the handle again to find that it was now unlocked. I thought that maybe it was my dad, but when I opened the door, and this only took like a second, he was in bed, sound asleep. And there's just no way that he would have had any time to get from the door back to his bed that quickly. I ran back to my room and grabbed my pillow and blankets, and just as I left my room, the door behind me slammed shut. I was terrified at this point. The slamming door woke my dad up too, and I tried explaining what just happened, but he was just irritated and didn't want to hear it. He told me to just lay down on his floor and go to sleep, and so that's what I did. The next morning, I discovered that my bedroom door was actually locked from the inside. So, not only did the door slam shut by itself, but it was also locked. Looking back on this experience, as terrifying as it was, it does seem benevolent. I was scared and wanted somewhere safe to go, and the door to the safe place was unlocked for me, while the place that I was terrified to be was closed off and locked, so whatever this thing was, it seemed to be looking out for me. I don't know, but all I do know is that it's a memory that will stick with me for as long as I live. This happened several years ago, but much of it is still fresh in my mind. My husband's son and I, we were visiting a local park with a great playground and a long paved sort of trail next to the lake. Hubby would stay with my kiddo while he played, and I would walk the dog and listen to a podcast. This park was usually very busy, but this was early spring and the weather wasn't really great. The sky was grey and the wind off the lake still had a bit of a nip to it. I didn't let that deter me though, and I had serious cabin fever and was ready to stretch my legs. So, me and my pup Beeb set off. It had been, I would say 15-20 minutes when I noticed my dog sort of acting strange. She was pulling on the leash a lot and seemed almost anxious. At this point I realized that I was almost completely alone. Almost. You see, I glanced back and there were two men. I'll refer to them as Man A and Man B, walking behind me at a pretty quick clip. Now, there was nothing outwardly strange about them, mind you. I just sort of shrugged off my unease and told myself that I must just be paranoid. I slowed a bit and let them pass me, which they did. I felt immediately better once they were well ahead of me too. They were a ways away, but in my line of sight as I walked. Several minutes later, they stopped, and Man A leaned and whispered something in Man B's ear. Man B nodded and started walking ahead, while Man A turned around and started walking back towards me. I did find it weird, but sort of just explained it away in my mind, I think. I mean, maybe he has to leave. Maybe he has to go to the bathroom. Maybe he isn't feeling well. As he passed, though, we made eye contact, and as a reflex, I smiled and nodded at him. But the smile I got back, it made my skin crawl. And looking back, I remember that my dog distinctly positioned herself between me and him. I kept walking for a while. I knew at this point I probably should have turned back, but I didn't. and for the next 5 minutes or so, everything was fine. But then I realized that I couldn't see Man B anymore. There was a bathroom right next to the trail, so he likely was in there, and as I'm processing this, my dog is pulling on the leash and looking behind us, and Man A is coming up fast. Not quite running, mind you, but definitely speed walking. I decided to sit down on a bench and be on the phone with my husband when he passed. I put him on speaker and made sure to loudly say, "Yeah, I'm turning around now, should be back shortly." And at that moment, my dog, who is truly the friendliest dog in the world and will love anyone who will scratch her behind the ears, lunged at this man, snarling and barking. She's part Norwegian elkhound, so her bark is pretty jarring. But she had never once done anything like this in the 6+ years that I'd had her. The man sidestepped and sort of scurried away, and as soon as he was far enough away that I thought that I wasn't going to get tackled from behind, I got up and booked it all the way back to my husband. Now, maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just being paranoid and worked myself up over nothing, but I don't know. My dog has never reacted like that. And the fact that these men were sort of disappearing and then reappearing like that, the whole thing seemed very fishy. I really believe that if my dog doesn't like you, though, it's for a good reason.